Welcome to the shed. What I'd like to do is just a little video on how I built a homemade windscreen for the DR650. Hope you enjoy it. Cheers. Okay, some of the basics. The little support frame for the screen bolts onto the top triple clamp and mounts in three spots. One is through the head stem, and each side we've got a mount on the top triple clamp bolt, and that's where the original blinker mounts used to go. So I've taken those off and included some new mounts on the frame for the blinkers, which are a little bit higher than standard and give me plenty of clearance on the tank. As you know, a lot of you guys know that when you put the bigger tanks on, you run into clearance issues with the standard blinker mounts. So I've moved those up a little bit, mounted them on so we've got plenty of clearance. And I've made it so that it clears the indicator lights. You can still see those while you're sitting on the bike. There's the speedo naturally, and sits out a little bit to give you move the screen forward a bit so give you plenty of clearance when you're riding. Okay, the screen itself bolts onto the headlight surround and on the top here onto the frame, and it's got rubber mounts on there which give the screen a little bit of movement, take out a bit of vibration, because I've also got a GoPro mount on the front there too. So okay, well, let's get into the actual build. The tubing that I'm using for this project is galvanized steel tube, 16mm diameter, 1.2mm wall thickness, and comes in a metre length from Bunnings, and you're looking about $3.70 a length. Okay, one of the issues, as you can imagine, is getting all these in the right spot in relation to each other. They've all got to mount up to the right holes in the right spots. This has got to sit at the right distance forward, all that sort of stuff. So what I did was made up a very rough version for a start that bolted on in all the right spots where I wanted it to, and then made up a jig which I'll show you now. Okay, so this little gadget here is my production jig. So these bolts on the side and the nuts welded on each side here are exactly the right spacing for the top triple clamp bolts. This one here is the center of the head stem and the head stem tube. Okay, so all these are in the right position in relation to each other, and this section up here is in relation to these, the angle that I wanted the frame to tilt forward. Okay, so this is another rough mount. As you can see, it sits on here, bolts onto the mounts, and this bar sits at the front here against this pole, and that gives me the right dimensions. Okay, this one's a little bit skew-iff because it was just a rough go using the jig. I've refined it a little bit since then. This one here has got the pipe comes to here and then finishes on this crossbar with some welded brackets on here that go down to the triple clamp bolts. I've got rid of that design and just followed the tube all the way through here, the right angle, and then just crossed the tube to a flat, welded the bottom of it and drilled a hole through for the mount. So the bar actually comes all the way, the tube comes all the way through in one piece. I thought that might be stronger than relying on welds at the bottom here, whereas you've got one piece tube all the way through and then a crossbar welded in with the bracket for the mount on it. The bender that I'm using is a homemade job. Doesn't look real flash, but works really well. So handle on the top, pull that around to bend the pipe. This section here clamps into the vise just to hold it all steady, and we've got some marks on the top here to show me where to bend to. I'll show you how that works in a second. Okay, what I've got on the top of the tube bender here is some little marks and notches. Okay, so that little notch there is what I use to line up the tubing so that this is in the center of the bend. Okay, so I know where to put my bend. This line with the notch here is at 90 degrees, so when I move this around, and I get to that mark, I know that I've got a 90-degree bend. The second mark here is the bottom bend on the bracket for the windscreen. The bend on that is actually past 90 degrees to get it to line up with the bolts. So this is the second mark that I use to actually do that bottom bend, which is past 90 degrees. Okay, so I've got a piece of an offcut of tubing here. I've got a mark on here where I want the center of my bend, so all I'm going to do is slide it in to the bender. Over here I'm just going to make sure that my black mark lines up with the mark on here for the center of the bend. Grab the handle, pull it round until I line up the top here with my 90-degree mark. And that's it, we're done. Pull it out and I've got a beautiful 90-degree bend. Now if you'd like to have a crack at making one of these yourself, the measurements that I use, that I come up with using lots of bits of metal welded together, a couple of beers and several swear words, are 150 mil to the middle of the bend on this leg, then 100 mil, 100 mil, 200 mil across the top, and then same on the other side, 100 mil, 100 mil, and then 150. Okay, next we'll mark out our bends on the piece of tubing. Okay, we've got a bit of excess here, so pipe cutter, line that up. Round we go. Nice smooth square cut. There we go. Okay, can deburr that as well. Beautiful. Okay, after all that bending, we hopefully come up with something that looks a bit like this. Nice and even, all the bends are the right way, everything looks nice and even. Okay, so then we move on to the next bit. Right, the next job is to crush the ends of these pipes, flatten them down so that I've got a flat section at the bottom here. I'll mark that and drill a hole to suit the bolt on the top triple clamp. Okay, what I've done here is marked in 20mm on each leg. All I'm going to do is pop that in the vise, at the 20mm mark. So this is all square, and then wind the vise in, squash it all down. And that will give me a nice flat end that I can drill through for our mounting bolt. Okay, there we go. Do the same on the other side, and then we'll drill some holes. Okay, I've marked the centre here where I want to drill a hole. So we'll just centre punch that. Oops, line him up. Another one there. Okay, centre punched, ready to drill. Okay, I'm all set up in the drill press. What I'm going to do is drill to a 5mm hole first, pre-drill, then swap to a 10.5mm. The bolt in the top triple clamps is 10. This just gives it a little bit of clearance, gives you a bit of leeway to make it fit a bit easier. Okay, here we go. Beautiful. Okay, we've got our holes drilled, so now what I'll do is just deburr the hole. I've got a deburring tool here. Pop it in, give it a bit of a twirl. If you haven't got one of those, what you can do is just grab a big drill bit, pop that in, give it a couple of turns by hand. Beautiful. Okay, now we see if it fits on the jig. Okay, bolt through there. Bolt through that one. Lift these up a little bit and pull it into line. Beautiful. All fits, looks reasonably straight. I'm happy with that. So the next step, we'll cut our bar across here, a cross brace, and weld the tab on that bolts down into the head stem. Okay, what I've done next is bolted the little mounting plate on, and that's the one that sits above the head stem tube. I've cut a piece of tubing that'll fit between the two bars here. Also remember I've hit this with a grinder just to take the gold coating off, and same on here where I'm going to weld, because you don't want to be welding that stuff and breathing the fumes. It's not good for you. Okay, if you don't want to do that, you can weld with the coating on, or you can maybe find someone you don't like and get them to weld it for you and let them breathe the fumes. Okay, so we pop that in there, and we're pretty much ready to tack weld these in place. Once I've done those and got a secure weld on those, I can take it out of the jig and turn it round to make it a bit easier to weld. Right, that went okay. I've managed to throw a bit of weld on this without setting fire to myself or the shed, so that's a good start. So I've got some decent welds on here. Welded these brackets on. Welded the cross brace on. Okay. If anyone's interested, the welder I'm using is just this little fella here, Bosweld inverter gasless MIG welder from Bunnings. I've had this for a while now. I had a bigger one with a gas bottle and everything, proper MIG welder, but it ended up carking it. So I got this one just to do a few jobs around the house and stuff like that, and I've been giving it a flogging ever since. It's only got the small roll of flux cord wire, but works really well. Very happy with it for the price. I think about $250 or something like that. Okay, indicator mount. This one's got a slot in it. I already made these ones, and I made them like that so that you didn't have to pull the wiring out. You can undo the nut off the indicator, slide the wiring through, and then do the nut up on the other side. But you still have to pull the wiring out anyway to get the old bracket off, so it doesn't really matter. But I had these made, so I'm going to use them anyway. Now they're going to sit on the bracket. They're going to point forward. This is facing the front of the bike. Okay, and I've got a little mark here, which is roughly about 30 millimeters up from the center of the mounting hole up to the bottom of the bracket. So they'll go on one each side. And I've also got some little tabs here, which will be welded on here, and they'll be the mounts for the top of the windscreen. Okay, so that's our next job. Okay, we're on the home stretch now. A couple more little jobs. Get these tabs and brackets welded on, and we're almost done. Oh, I didn't burn this shed down. Come and have a look at this. Okay, so we've got our indicator mounts welded on, welded front and rear, both sides. And I've also got the 2 tabs for our top windscreen mounts. Okay, so that's about it for the frame. If we're happy with that, ready to paint. What I've done on mine is added a small brace just here, because I've got a mount coming from my Garmin GPS, and that'll clip on right here next to the speedo. So as soon as that arrives, I'll pop that on, but that's our frame pretty much done. Next step is the screen.